some food for thought. So thanks very much.
Hopefully I'll keep some of that. Anyone who's got any questions, please put your hand.
Just before the referendum, I heard you speak at a debate at Strathclyde, and at the end of that, you said if the polls start to look as if it's going to get close, the Westminster politicians will come forward and offer you all sorts of bribes, and you go off your head and you accepted them. We know what's happened. What's going to happen now? Because we haven't actually delivered what they promised. How do you see that going from now on?
Yeah.
You mentioned the Smith report.
Aye, okay, wow. I'll come right on this, right. Before I answer that question, I'm going to tell you a wee story that I started telling, because part of that debate was Jim Murphy was on the other side. And Jim Murphy and I both went to Strathclyde University. And he was there for 9 years and I was there for 6 years. And
how many degrees did he get?
And between us we've got 2 degrees and he hasn't got either of them. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I made that point, and it was kind of obvious to everybody because we moved through it in the 70s as well, in the 80s, with the devolution situation. I mean, clearly the politics drives all of this, and it was what David Cameron did on the morning after the referendum in terms of evil. There's what's happened with Smith, which has been positioned to look like it's something, but it isn't. There's a lot of holes, a lot of gaps in it, and even what is there isn't guaranteed. In the history of Calman, for example, in VAT, for example, if passenger duty means that it doesn't necessarily mean that what's in there is what you're actually going to get. So all the hurdles are there, and at the end of the day, in politics it's all about power. So you've got the power and you've got the MPs down there making this stuff happen, then it'll happen. And that's the only guarantee. It's all there to be done. There's 2 scenarios. A scenario where we don't have power down there, it'll just all get brushed under the carpet in business as usual at Westminster. There's a scenario where we do have power, which looks to be the most likely scenario, a balanced parliament, if you want to call it that, with a strong pro-Scotland, if you want to say, number of MPs down there, then the power will be there to make stuff happen. The end game within the union, of course, is Devo Max, which is full fiscal autonomy. People define it's like Devo Max and Devo Super Max and Devo Super Double Plus Max. The clues in the title, maximum means there isn't anything bigger than that, right? That's the clues in the title. That's why it's called Devo Max, and Devo Max, by definition, means full fiscal autonomy, everything except what leaves you as a coherent country, which is foreign affairs and defence policy, because that's what defines the fact you've got a country, the fact you talk to other countries and defend yourself. So everything short of that is Devo Max, full fiscal autonomy, and that's what we're obviously pushing towards. How much of that we get, it'll be one step at a time. But I can see a scenario for the next 5 and possibly the next 10 years where we just start to bring those powers back one at a time. And that's all to the good, because frankly, you're better bringing those back and digesting the set of infrastructure and the skills to deal with that now, because it means that the final step is much smaller when it comes in. So I hope that answers that question. Sorry.
Okay, I've got a question from the internet. It's from Robert Dunsmore. What does Ivan think of Nicola Sturgeon's proposal to borrow $180 billion to help exit austerity?
Well, I kind of touched on that. If you go through the austerity model, why it doesn't work, and you look at the 180 billion, which I said sounds like a big number, but it is only 0.5% increase in spending, and all it does is take investment levels back to where we were at the start of the crash. Then it's a coherent policy, and you've got to remember that as you're putting that money into the economy, it's going into infrastructure investment, capital investment in the main, and that's creating jobs and creating tax take, reducing benefit spend and kickstarting the economy. So the multiplier means that more than that amount is coming back into the coffers as you grow the economy. So I think it's pitched right, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Somebody?
Yes, just you touched on something regarding confidence in Scotland, and I think it's a tricky one, because the no voters that I know, most of it is a lack of confidence
Yeah.
in Scotland going at it their own, but they endow these people down south with an intelligence that they don't really have. And I think that's tricky to change in this country. I don't know how you go about that.
Well, I think it's the event was phenomenal from that point of view, because I think it was a huge change. I think if you think back to the late 70s and early 80s, which I can remember, the lack of confidence was much more significant then. And over the course of devolution, we've built up that confidence because we have had and it's a consequence of having some powers here and showing we can run stuff and run it well, and that model of being close to government makes sense. So all that kind of feeds on itself and takes time. And I think the new generations coming up have got a different view on it. Perhaps the people that were around in the 70s and 80s were those generations then. So I think it's interesting you see in the demographic of the way the vote went, where most of the yes and no voters were. Yes, the majority of under 65s, if you look at it that way, which is remarkable. So that's what it's all about, but to my mind I'm fairly relaxed about that, because I see that going in the right direction, and I actually see it accelerating, because I think stuff will happen in the next year, in the next 5 years, that will bring more powers back here, and we'll have Scottish people running that and making it work in Scotland. But also we'll have Scottish MPs down south making a huge positive impact on what's happening for the whole UK, which is going to be quite a dramatic thing as well. So I think it's all got to be done. And one of the remarkable things, I spent about 3 or 4 months working in Norway, and there's a lot of good things about Norway, but I would say the most remarkable thing is just the confidence of a Norwegian. If you talk to them, they look you in the eye and they know that they've got it made, and they don't need to bow down to anybody, right? They just look at you and say, I'm a Norwegian, and it doesn't matter what you do, because we are where we are. We've got what we've got. We can do what we like, and we'll work with you. But we're working with you from a position of confidence and strength, and that's quite remarkable. And I think we'll gradually get to that as we go forward. So.
Just a bit of a two-part question.
Sure.
Really. The first part is very simple. What do you think the Scottish Government can do to increase the manufacturing output of Scotland to help our economy in that way? And the other part, as we've touched on the Smith Commission, part of that was Scotland was to get income from the Crown estates. Now, it's come out recently in the last day or so that the UK government have said that any new income from the Crown estates will not be given to Scotland. So would it be a good way to look at this as perhaps Balmoral estates given income would be given to Scotland until it changed its name from, say, Balmoral Limited to Balmoral ABC Limited, therefore becoming a new accounting income and be classed as new? Just wonder if you got thoughts on that.
Well, so the first part of the question was
Just manufacturing.
Manufacturing, well, both those are big questions. I mean, the manufacturing, there's no easy answer. It's a long slog. It'll take years. It'll take decades. You need to start where you are. You need to identify. I mean, Alex Salmon launched the reindustrialisation strategy, which was June last year, and I was there when he launched that. And it's a good document, and it kind of lays out the stuff you need to do. But there's no easy answers to that. It's a long, slow process. You identify the sectors where you've got inherent strengths, and those are things that you can't easily make somewhere else. So don't make things that are small and high volume, because somebody in China will make them cheaper than you always will do all day long. Make things that are high technology, evolving technology, stuff that's big, stuff that so you can't easily transport it around the world, which is kind of when you get to renewables, right, which is an obvious one, or stuff that's very clever academically, like some of the life sciences stuff, where you can lean on your academic strengths. So you play your strengths. But the great thing about a country of 5 million people is you don't, in world terms, need to generate a lot of jobs. If you're running an Indian economy, you've got a problem. You've got to generate 1 billion jobs, and how many extra jobs you generate every year? But it's tens of millions, right? So you've got a big challenge there. If you're running the Scottish economy, in global terms, it's not a lot of jobs. So you can find a few niches in global terms that work for you, and you become world class at those and make it happen. And that's what it's all about, identifying those sectors. Don't try to be good at everything. Don't try to build stuff that you're competing with with Asia or whatever, build stuff where you've got high technology and you can get high value add, which means higher paid jobs eventually. But say there's no easy answer to that, but it's about doing lots of small things that all add up over a period of time and being focused on it. And the key thing is being focused on that and not being focused on the City of London, which is where we are today, which is a huge part of why we're in the mess we're in the manufacture. In terms of the Crown Estates, I don't profess to be an expert on that. My understanding is that the biggest part of that is actually the shoreline stuff, which is classed as Crown Estates, which I think means that revenue from close-in renewable type activity goes back to the UK government and the Scottish government. That's kind of understanding of it. But I believe it was in Smith that would be transferred to some extent. But all of these things, it's going to be a question of how much power have you got and how do you leverage that power at Westminster. That's the bottom line. If you do that, everything else takes care of itself. So, who's next?
Okay, I've got two questions from the internet. One from Brian McKee. What's Ivan's thoughts on TTIP? And the other one from Robert Dunsmore again is, an event of another indie ref, current session needs to be sold. What is your thoughts on this?
You're alright to this. Just tell what you don't want me to talk about, a bit quicker. TTIP, okay. There's three things to say about TTIP. The first thing is global trade is good, right? The internationalisation, in my mind, is good. I travel the world, do business all over the world. We just talked about export. You can't export if you don't have a global economy, right? So Scotland's economy is dependent on exports, be it oil, be it whisky, be it food and drink, be it whatever, or be it tourism, which is effectively an export industry, etc. And talk about manufacturing, is going to be manufacturing for export. So having a global economy with less trade barriers is a good thing, and things that move us towards that are to be encouraged. The second thing about TTIP is you've got to do that in a way that protects the social policy, if you like, or the regulation around about how you do business, because business will operate within the regulation that's there, and it's the job of the government to put that regulation in there that makes sense, be that minimum wage, be that health and safety, be that whatever it happens to be. So it's important that that regulation is coherent and makes sense. Part of the thing that people are worried about TTIP is we end up in a situation where North American regulation, which very often can be less strict than European regulation, gets imported over here, which I think wouldn't make sense. I think we've got Europe-wide policies on, be it employment legislation, health and safety, whatever, that by and large work, and that's something that you wouldn't want to see diluted through that kind of process. That doesn't mean that TTIP is going to make that happen, but I know it's something that people are worried about, and it's something that through the negotiations, the European Union, which is effectively negotiating on that, we need to make sure was dealt with. And the third thing, of course, about TTIP is what it does for the health service, potentially other public services, and that is all about individual governments or the European Union as a whole taking opt-outs from parts of the economy that you don't want to be subject to TTIP. And the health sector is an obvious one, other parts of the public services which should be excluded from that, because you absolutely don't want a situation where you're opening up the health service to American private healthcare companies coming in and running all over it. The problem's been that the UK government, the French got an opt-out into the film industry, which I think is the most important thing as far as the French are concerned, but the UK government hadn't put in any exclusions for public sector or the health service in particular, which I think should be in place, because otherwise you potentially could leave yourself open to as I say, American private healthcare companies coming in. So that's kind of my view on TTIP. It's a mixed bag. In general, it makes sense, but you've got to do the negotiations and approach it in a way that preserves the things that we want to preserve. Currency, right? Very quickly on currency, if you look at Scandinavia, and one of the great things about looking at stuff for IndyRef or an independent Scotland potentially was there was almost always an example of somewhere in the world you could look and say how does it work there and how does it work in Scotland, because most of this stuff has been done somewhere else. Currency is another one that's been done. Every permutation, if you look at Scandinavia and you get Finland in the euro and effectively in a currency union with Germany and the rest of the Eurozone. You've got